Hello, everyone. Talk of the Town is up and running in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, USA. I'm Scott Montesano, and this is where the Chippewa Valley comes to talk. We are back for our fall into spring schedule. You and I together multiple times a week at 3 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays for the most part. Live Tuesdays and Thursdays at 3 o'clock on YouTube. The podcast dropping, as always, shortly thereafter. But you and I together again most Tuesdays and Thursdays. Looking ahead to the schedule, we won't be live every Tuesday and Thursday for the next several weeks, but we will at least have a show every Tuesday and Thursday, probably right up until Thanksgiving. So you and I together at last after a few weeks away. Our usual August sabbatical has been taken. I'm refreshed, and you are hungry for thoughts and opinions as to what is happening in the Chippewa Valley. Of course, we've got all of our other great shows at Eau Claire Hometown Media, and if you are not already a fan of them, give them a chance. They will grow on you. It's like coleslaw. I wasn't a big fan of coleslaw when I was a teenager. By the time I graduated high school, it was a mandatory must as a side dish with my fish fry and with my barbecue, pulled pork and what have you. So let it grow on you. All of our other great shows, and of course many of our shows that also have taken a summer sabbatical, they will be back starting in early September. Well, I hope you've all enjoyed yourselves. I've got my summer tan. If you are watching on the YouTube, I've got my summer tan lightly toasted from the last few weeks out in the sun, taking advantage of the weather, which, the lack of rain aside, and you step outside into your yard and it sounds like popping popcorn. It's so crunchy. It's like the bubble wrap. You step on your yard and you can hear the popping and the crackling sound. Short of the fact we haven't had rain, and boy, could we use a day-long rain, just a rainy day. Short of that, the temperatures have been unbelievable. You got to get outside. You got to enjoy this. This is unbelievable what the weather has been like temperature-wise these last few weeks. So much going on, of course. Students back at UW Eau Claire over the next few days. It's like ants on a fallen popsicle stick. They will flood on into our area. A couple of weeks ago, the Eau Claire Express made a nice run in the Northwoods League playoffs. That was a big deal in our town. So we've got a lot going on. We got plenty we're going to touch on this show. Quickly, before we dive any deeper, quick thing to bring up. High school football began last week. It still doesn't feel right for there to be high school football in August. And I understand the timeline concerns and why you've got to start now and what have you, but it's still balls and strikes weather, not 1st and 10 weather. Doesn't hit the same way when you have high school football games in August. It's like sitting down for a big turkey dinner with stuffing and mashed potatoes in April. It doesn't hit the same way as it does on Thanksgiving. But regardless, high school football has gotten underway. We are not doing high school sports broadcasts this year. I've had some people reach out and gone, hey, what's the high school broadcast schedule for Memorial and North and Regis games? We are not covering high school sports this year. A couple of reasons why. One, our partnership expired with Civic Media, and they've elected to go in a different direction in terms of they're not doing anything. They're not quite the local outlet they thought they were going to be. So Civic Media is not doing it, and we've elected to sit it out ourselves too. Time and what have you. I just didn't have the energy to put into doing high school games. We've had some people reach out. They've said, hey, Scott, We'll help fund it, and you can do the games and do a video feed, which I've always looked into. It's just not something that I really want to do at the moment. And frankly, I really think high school games should be broadcasted by the students themselves. And that's what my son's going to do. My son's going to be the one announcing all of the Eau Claire Memorial games on Old Abe TV. I know up at North, Eau Claire North, they have students do their games. So leave it to the students. I'll focus on my minor league hockey and minor league baseball that I do. So that's why you're not seeing any high school sports schedule from us. We're not doing it anymore, at least this year. I'm open to other opportunities in the future, but Civic Media didn't really want to continue. We probably could have pushed it a little bit more, but I'm okay with sitting this year out. Best of luck to all the athletes and the coaches out there. Now, moving on. We can touch on a number of things in the last 2 weeks that popped up. And we'll talk about it on Thursday, for instance, after what comes out tomorrow, the whole Lily Peters case and what behind the door decisions were made that have now eluded there being a jury trial with that case. That came out a couple weeks ago. We'll find out more tomorrow. We can touch on that. We can touch on a number of things. Simply put, a lot of you did not follow my advice and just relax for the last couple of weeks. There are a number of things we could have hit on, but we'll start with something that came to light just this week. The Eau Claire City Council is going to most likely on Tuesday night vote to pass an ordinance that's going to press the State Attorney General's office, Josh Call, on an answer to an issue that the City Council brought up 19 months ago, so almost 2 full years ago. That being, and I remember talking about it when it first came out. It's one of those things, too, you kind of forgot that this was an issue, and you thought it maybe had been taken care of because you hadn't heard anything about it. But it turns out nothing has been done. The issue being what legally can be done about Dunn County and St. Croix County police departments dropping individuals off in Eau Claire without, as it is put, a warm handoff. Just plopping them down as though it's a game of The Sims and you've grabbed your character and moved them around. Some of you may remember growing up playing Roller Coaster Tycoon. Other variations of a game like that, where you can grab your little character, your little computer character, and you pick them up like it's the claw game at the arcade, and they're wiggling their legs and whatnot, and you can move your character wherever. Okay, you played God, if you will. Well, that in real life is really what is happening here, that individuals picked up in other areas, namely Dunn County and in St. Croix County, and they're brought to Eau Claire. These are typically unhoused individuals who have been picked up. They need a place to go. And since those areas don't have many resources, if any resources, for these individuals, the police and the individual many times say, let's go to Eau Claire. But there isn't an official place to go, so they are just dropped off. They might be dropped off literally in the middle of nowhere, many times dropped off somewhere downtown, maybe near a shelter. Even if that shelter is full, they're just dropped off in spots. Many times they're dropped off with little to no prior knowledge by local authorities, the shelters, organizations that maybe could help out, or even the local police department. And rightfully so, the Eau Claire City Council, representing the citizenry, is annoyed by this. There isn't any type of partnership going on here. It's being forced on the area, and it's a very blatant example of how Eau Claire is just the central hub for what is a metropolitan area. Eau Claire is going to be the central hub for a number of things, including various organizations and resources that you have. But feels as though Eau Claire is being taken advantage of here. There is no partnership that is going on. It's being forced. It doesn't mean the people in Eau Claire aren't willing to help, but you can't just assume either. It's like leaving socks in the living room, expecting mom or your significant other just to pick them up for you. This is akin to, let's say in high school, and I tried to think of a good analogy that wouldn't be insulting to these individuals that are being transported, all right? Because they're not trash. So this is the analogy I came up with. Imagine being in high school and you open up your locker and there's a caterpillar in your locker. There's a caterpillar in your locker. Just got in there. You don't want the caterpillar in your locker. So you grab the caterpillar and you slide it. You go to your neighbor's locker. Your neighbor isn't there. The door is shut. And you know how you got those openings in the locker? You just take the caterpillar and you let it crawl off your finger into their locker without them even knowing. Now, your neighbor may very well have taken the caterpillar. If you had asked, they may have taken it, wanted to take it outside, maybe put it in a jar, see if it turns into a butterfly, whatever. But by doing it without asking, just putting it in their locker, you are simply moving an issue and perhaps creating a new one in terms of unnecessary tension. There is no partnership that is going on here. So good on the city of Eau Claire for pushing this issue with the state attorney general's office, and it brings to light this. What the hell is going on in the state attorney general's office? This is unprecedented. A municipality asking, hey, what should be the next steps for what we can do legally with this? But instead of showing leadership here, the state attorney general's office is trying to wait it out. It clearly seems like they're waiting it out. You can't come to any answers in 19 months? It's like a school principal dealing with two teachers who are bickering daily, and they've asked the principal to decide on something, and instead the principal just waits until the school year ends to see if one of them maybe doesn't return. Maybe time allows other pressing issues to drown out their conflict and they worry about other things. So that is a concern that the state attorney general's office, what are we paying them for? I'm sure they've done other things important over the last 2 years, but they can't figure this out. Also, how has locally this not been figured out? How has locally this not been rectified? It is not as simple, I think, as saying Dunn County, St. Croix County can't bring individuals here to Eau Claire. But we have to work on a real partnership that there is, and what type of compensation maybe is there for the citizens of Eau Claire, that resources here are going to be used by people that are from outside the county. Who's going to reimburse, compensate? If there's nonprofits in Eau Claire that are being stretched by people coming from 45 minutes, an hour away, how do they get reimbursed for this? How do we improve the communication? So this has got to get figured out. You can't just drop people off in Eau Claire. You can't. And the communication's got to be much, much better. So good on the Eau Claire City Council for pressing this again, bringing it back to light. It does raise the question, how has this not been figured out before? The other thing that has come to light in the last little bit is downtown parking. Now, City of Eau Claire, downtown parking, it is now pay to park in downtown Eau Claire. It's been that way now for a few weeks. We will hold off on a full take for another few weeks, if not, frankly, another few months. We will hold off on a full take on this. Now, I was and I remain against paid parking. Even a couple of our staff members have said, oh, I pay to park in Madison. I pay to park in the Twin Cities. Doesn't mean crap. doesn't mean crap that you paid to park in other areas. This was a strength that downtown Eau Claire had. Couple that with the fact that downtown businesses, there was traffic downtown, but there wasn't necessarily a lot being spent downtown. It was a little tenuous, a little fugazi at times. People are downtown socially hanging out, but there wasn't necessarily a lot of money being spent. So, downtown's been getting stronger this last little bit, and it feels like downtown has been burgeoning for a while now, but it really has only been maybe 10 years, if not maybe 5 since the pandemic. So it's not like it has been a long time downtown's been really blossoming into what it is. We've seen growth. It is tremendously more successful than it was in, say, 2006. But it really has just in the last little bit hit, I wouldn't say a peak, but really to where it is the entity that we think of. Now, and as I said, I remain against downtown parking. I don't care what other cities do. But I'm also going to try to make it work because it's not going away for at least a year. Let's be honest. There is not going to be a pivot back anytime soon. It's not going to happen right away. And for those that are, I think, still pounding their fist on the table, it's like throwing a tantrum on your way to get braces put on. Our son did that. He didn't want braces on his teeth years ago. And you know what? It's happening whether you want it to or not. There are benefits to getting same thing for our son. He didn't want braces. Could he have survived without braces? Absolutely. But we made the decision to get braces on his teeth. So the next step for our son, and the next step for, say, people that are against downtown paid parking like me and you, for many of you, your next potential win is getting it reversed, getting the braces taken off, if you will, as soon as possible, but it won't be tomorrow. It's not going to be what I would deem soon, what a lot of you would call soon. You might be able to get this reversed in a year or a year and a half or 2 years, depending on what the data is. But it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not. We're adults. We understand it's not going to happen tomorrow. The braces are on. They were put on. They're not coming off tomorrow. Acceptance now, accepting that it's there, and going down and not changing your pattern or whatever, that isn't acquiescing to this being forever. That doesn't mean that you're all of a sudden somebody that's in lockstep with the decision. But if you do elect to fight, namely avoid downtown, that is perfectly acceptable too. Going downtown doesn't mean you're in lockstep with this being a good idea, and avoiding downtown doesn't mean you are turning your back on local businesses. You are making newly informed decisions. For some people, the paid parking will be a huge hassle, and it won't stop anything. Or maybe it keeps them from going downtown as much. For others, this is going to completely change. They're going to say the heck with it. And there's also going to be a number of people that weren't going downtown anyway that'll just use this as another thing to bitch and moan about on social media. I will say, and the only thing I wanted to talk about with downtown parking was this. And I was just downtown earlier today, in the morning when you don't paid park, and I saw the signs up at businesses, and I've seen it online too. I'm not sure I like the tactic taken by some downtown businesses scrambling to say they'll pay for your parking. they get a lot of you get positivity on social media, and people say, yeah, stick it to the man. Don't really know how you're sticking it to the man by the man still getting his money, doesn't care who's paying for it. But these businesses scrambling to say they'll pay for your parking. Hey, you come in, you buy something from my business, I'll take money off your bill, the dollar or so. I'll show me your parking receipt, I'll take it off. It comes across as thirsty, as maybe a little desperate. And as I heard another downtown business owner tell me today, it almost sounds like all this flood of it. Some of the restaurants, the record store downtown have done this, and they've made a big deal out of it. It makes it sound like downtown has already become a ghost town, which it hasn't. There are still people going downtown. There are still people experiencing downtown. Restaurants are still getting business. Now, both sides, I put that in quotation marks, have sent me studies already. We just had Dave Solberg, the city manager, on a podcast, Bank with a Beer, recently. He pointed out, we've already seen it has not changed anything. All our data, blah, blah, blah. And I got other people saying, well, there's a study that's come out that said traffic is already down 50%. How are you actually doing studies yet? Folks, it's been a couple of weeks. We got to let this whole thing play out. If I were the businesses downtown, we'll see how it works out, paying for people's parking. I think it sounds desperate. I think it might come across as being desperate, and you might be making it sound like everybody's staying away from downtown. I would be more so inclined, if I was a downtown business, to make a big deal out of why you do want to come downtown. And you might have to make more of an effort to making it you come downtown and you're going to spend some time downtown. Well, then that means they have to spend more on parking because it's time we're talking a couple of bucks. It almost makes more sense to spend a couple of bucks on parking than it does to try to be in and out and spend $1 on parking. Downtown's going to have to become more of a destination, which it already was, as opposed to an in and out. And we're going to learn over the next little bit. It's not going to. We all can have theories. We all can have hypotheses as to what's going to happen with this. But we need to let it play out before we really do decide what the next steps are. What I'm saying is I did not want this. I didn't want paid parking. You really can't. You still can't convince me. I understand we need to make money. There needs to be money. There's a budget crunch. And as I told somebody else, did we explore selling advertising on the lampposts and stuff like that? What other avenues was there other than nickel and diming the public some more? But it is here. So now what we have to do is really let this play out. Great local example. A great local example is what happened at River Prairie. Remember, when River Prairie first opened, it was backed-in parking. All the studies said backed-in parking is so much safer. You got to do backed-in parking. And people hated it. They didn't like it. There were people that stayed away from River Prairie because they didn't like the idea of backed-in parking. So what did the city of Altoona eventually do? After a few years, they took out the backed-in parking. Said you don't have to back-in park anymore. Let's let it, because they had seen it maybe hold River Prairie back a bit. Let's see how this plays out. I understand on a daily basis, even a slight drop in business may impact local businesses, but slight variations right now, too, might be false positives on any factor. We just mentioned UW Eau Claire students are just getting back in the town now. You haven't had the bulk of the Pablo Center season yet. Let's see how that plays out. A couple other things. We are going to be in the midst, especially once we get past Labor Day, though it already feels like we are in it, election season. And there's obviously the big congressional race in the area. You've got a couple of local elections, though, that are getting a lot of attention, namely because you got some money that's come into them as well, and you're seeing some highly stylized ads, a lot more stylized than you typically get for local, even local state elections tend not to get this type of highly produced ads. But regardless, you had the controversy last week with Michelle Magadan Skinner, the Republican challenger, running against the state Senate incumbent, the Democrat Jeff Smith. Now, this state Senate seat covers Eau Claire, Chippewa, Dunn, and Trempealeau counties, so a big swath of area. The Senate Democrat Committee last week sought to remove Magadan Skinner from the ballot, stating her primary residency is in fact Georgia, where she and her husband also own a home and where apparently her husband lives. They do not live together. They live separate, though we'll get to that in a moment. It appears as though that's just the way their marriage is arranged. It's still a marriage. They're not separated or anything like that. They're just living separate lives. Now, a judge last week didn't dismiss the motion, so the lawsuit can continue. The Magadan Skinner is not deemed innocent, if you will. She may still very much, her primary residency may be proven to be Georgia. That was not decided last week, but the judge did deny the motion to remove her from the ballot while it's sorted out. So she isn't necessarily innocent yet, but she'll still be on the ballot because no final decision has been made. My take is this. Many people have multiple residences. Many people do. Usually within the same state. You may have a lake home somewhere. Many people do. Now, that's not the majority of people, but people have multiple residencies or they live in different areas. I myself leave for 2 months to do minor league baseball. But with Michelle Magadan Skinner, and this is the defense I'll give to her, and I think where the issue is going to be is where is she paying most of her taxes and her primary residency, all that. They're going to get into the weeds on that, but I know this. She's been in our area for a while. She's been back in our area for a while now, and she's been very active for probably the last 6 or so years. She's been extremely active in the area, not only sitting on some various boards, the Lake Altoona board. She's ran and won a spot on the Eau Claire County board. She's active in the church I go to. I know that, though I wish she wouldn't sing as much as she does. I don't think she quite hears her singing voice the same way the rest of us do. So she does live here. She lives here. And, she's not just the body. She actually lives here. I don't know what type of relationship she and her husband have. Do they see each other? Are they just basically good friends at this point? They're not divorced. They're not separated, but they're living different lives. They have their own reasons And you yourself may use that as a reason to vote for or against her, depending on that. Either way, this isn't an endorsement. I want to make that clear for Magadan Skinner. Because if anything, I'm not a fan of her personally. Because she took an unnecessary attack on me, this business, and you. I've said this story before. A couple of years ago, the Republican Party in Eau Claire County was strongly thinking about doing a podcast with us, which would make a lot of sense for both the Republicans and the Democrats to do a podcast. It makes too much damn sense. They should do a podcast so they can tell their story, because both sides think the media is full of crap. Well, tell the story yourself. And we had the guy, I forget who he was, the head of the Republican Party in Eau Claire, was talking to him. We're together. It's like a Monday morning. And she comes walking on in. Unannounced, unexpected. He wasn't expecting her in. But she comes walking on in because she's got nothing else to do except hang out apparently at the Republican headquarters. And he calls her over to the table to sit down because he's like, hey, Michelle also, I want to get her thoughts on this. And he starts saying, hey, I'm looking at starting the podcast. And Michelle, who, by the way, had been on a couple of our podcasts already when she was running for the county seat, proceeds to then spend the next 5 minutes talking about, she goes, well, who are you? Like asking, who the heck am I? And not in a tell me your story, like a who do you think you are coming in here kind of way. And then proceeds to go, well, nobody cares about podcasts. I told her the listenership we get. She goes, I don't believe you. She's like, I bet. She goes, nobody follows podcasts. Nobody would pay any attention. Nobody cares. I go, we got all these listeners. It doesn't matter. And again, she'd been on a couple of our shows. I said, you were on a couple of our shows. And she goes, I don't remember doing that. Such an insult to the people she was on the shows with. So this isn't an endorsement of Magadan Skinner, nor is it a, by default, endorsement of Jeff Smith. What I'm saying, though, is that whole issue from last week, which will be easily forgotten by November anyway, is this. Whether, now legally she has to have her primary residency here in order to actually represent the area. But don't get caught up in the fact that she and her husband live separate lives. All right? Now, I myself live very happily with my wife and kids and all of that. I don't relate as much to the life that she might be living, but that to each their own on that. A couple other things quickly before we go. Chippewa Falls has released the names of the finalists for their city manager job, hiring their first city manager since 2009. Great job done by both EAU and QOW. You can go take a look at who those candidates are for the finalists for the Chippewa Falls city manager job. City of Eau Claire looking into the Riverwalk, which we heard Dave Solberg talk about on the recent Banker with a Beer, creating a Riverwalk. That would be kind of akin to what you have in San Antonio, though not quite as elaborate, but a Riverwalk. Take advantage of the waterways that we have. So they've paid for a study. Of course, you've got to pay for a study. But they're paying for a study to see what it would look like, how you would go about doing it. It may very well be something that you and I don't get to truly experience, as it's probably going to be 2 or 3 generations away. But like a good farmer plants the seeds for there to be growth down the way, same thing here. You plant the seeds now for something to happen 20 years. It's not quite spring to fall, spring planting, fall harvest, but you plant now. Think of a lot of the great things we've got going on now in our area. Yes, some of them came to fruition very quickly, within a matter of years, if not months, but in many ways the ground, the fertile nature was set up years ago, including zoning, TIF districts, all of that. All right, so great to be back with all of you. Look forward to you and I talking together most every Tuesday and Thursday from now until the end of May. And then, of course, we go back into our summer schedule. On behalf of everyone who made this podcast possible, I'm Scott Montesano saying there's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow shining at the end of every day. Make sure to take advantage of it. And until next time, so long, everybody.